Welcome back, I suppose. I am delighted to announce that today's podcast is sponsored by the local town criers service, Town Square Space. I mean, I say that I'm delighted, but as you can imagine, I'm being less than completely sincere. Town Squarespace provides an all-in-one platform that gives you everything you need to announce your announcements or proclaim your proclamations. Who writes this stuff? Town Squarespace's professional town criers are at least 30% louder than any other town criers. Whether you're just getting started or are an established brand, our powerful platform helps your business grow. I remember when it was perfectly acceptable to announce your next genocidal plan by posting it on the local notice board, but apparently no one looks at notice boards anymore, so you have to pay a man to bellow in people's faces. You people sicken me. Back to the podcast. I have let Russ Morrissey and Peter Coffey out of the dungeon for a few hours. You're lucky you can't smell them.
All the tabletop role-playing news. We aim to amuse and we aim to enthuse. And Morris's unofficial tabletop RPG.
Hello, and welcome to Morris's unofficial tabletop RPG talk. I, as always, am Russ, aka Morris, or Morris, aka Russ. And with me, as always, is my co-host,
Peter Coffey from the Southampton Guild of Role Players. Russ, I am, as ever, both delighted and delectable. Wait, that doesn't make any sense. But anyway, I'm still here, and isn't that what really matters? Russ, we also have with us in our studio, our Faces Made for Radio broadcasting situation, we have the fantastic, the one and only, the man whose name we apparently are reliably not pronouncing properly. I'm going to say Chris Spivey.
And I'm going to say Chris Spivey. Which one of us is correct, Chris?
Well, one of you is correct and one of you is wrong. And it would be Chris Spivey.
Oh, I was correct. There we go.
Oh, never mind. Okay, Chris Spivey.
Early in the morning here, so I will not hold it against you.
I better not mention it in the afternoon for us, otherwise that would be awkward. I should probably have checked that before we had you on the podcast, but never mind.
So do you want to tell our listeners who Chris is? Introduce him.
Oh, yes, that would have been an awesome idea.
Probably be a good idea, yeah.
Yeah, this is the creative genius, I believe, editor-in-chief at Darker Hues Studios, who, with Harlem Unbound, managed to get themselves a gold Ennie for, what was it, best product? Or best
I managed to acquire 3 gold Ennies.
3 gold Ennies. Oh, okay.
Best writing, best setting, and for best cover, which Brennan Reese killed it on.
You should have warned them for the podcast. You know, like how Olympic athletes sometimes go on to chat shows wearing their gold medals.
Yeah, but I think that would have helped as well. And also a man whose writing is so awesome that he had to be pipped by the concept of actual play at the Origins. That was the only thing holding him back from gold. It was the concept of actual play. They had to bring in an entire metaphysical concept in order to hold this man down. That was just how it is.
That was the Diana Jones, not the Origins, I believe. But yeah, that was an odd call. That.
But I was also fortunate enough to win the Indie Groundbreaker Award, which I'm also really proud of, too.
Excellent.
Damn straight. Well done. Yeah, so it's been, 2018's been quite a good year then, really.
Yeah, it was a passing year.
It was a year that happened.
Moving swiftly on. So, Peter, could you tell me what's caught your eyes in the world of RPGs in the last week?
Well, I think probably the thing that was most interesting to me personally, there were a couple of things. One was Playing a Different Race of Human Sensitively by James Mendez Rhodes, or Rhodes, potentially. Can't pronounce his name either. It's a common thing I've got going on. I hope it's Rhodes, like the place, but it might be Rhodes. It's hard to say. Anyway, and he had a whole article about may I play a character from another race and how to do it sensitively, which was sort of entirely unrelated to Chris coming on, because he's also got some advice on that in his Harlem Unbound. But also, I did also see how to set up a 200-member self-sustaining gaming community. So that is something that will be put in the show notes, but which I thought was definitely worthy about talking.
How do you set up a 200-member self-sustaining gaming community? By self-sustaining, do you mean like like a greenhouse where they don't need to get food in from the outside. And what do you mean by self-sustaining?
Well, I don't mean like an ark for us.
Right, okay. Just clarifying that. It's like the Eden Project or something.
Like the Eden Project, but for geeks. Well, that is something. That's an aspiration that we're all going for. But it's basically you just advertise and say, "Hey, you should come play with us." And the variety of different channels that would do it. It's just generally you just keep doing it, and you just keep saying, "Hey, come play with us! Yay, we're awesome! Come play roleplay games." Which obviously I'm a big believer in.
Okay then.
Yeah. What's caught your eye, Russ?
Well, I'm going to be a little bit self-serving with my Caught My Eye this week.
Oh.
Because yesterday I posted a job advert.
A job advert?
A job advert I've been meaning to post for about 6 months.
Oh, is this for your publishing assistant?
Yeah, you see, the problem was I didn't have enough time to post the job advert, which would give me the time to put... what I actually need is a person to be already doing the job so they could write and post the advert for me, but... So it's been 6 months I've been trying to find the time to write this job posting.
Oh, yeah.
Unbelievable.
Too busy to get the help you need, yeah.
Yeah, essentially, yeah. So basically, it's a publishing administrator job. It's 10 to maybe 15 hours a week, part-time job, UK-based, although working from home. And it just involves all sorts of things, all levels of the publishing process. So, from updating records to dealing with distributors to dealing with printers to commissioning marketing materials to arranging convention appearances. The whole suite of stuff, which I've spent so much time doing over the last 6 months that I haven't had time to do my own job. So hopefully this will mean that I can actually start doing what I actually got into this to do, which was actually write stuff.
Interesting. So you want to actually write role-playing?
I want to get back to actually writing stuff, yeah. That would be nice.
No, that's fantastic news. We're glad that you're able to take someone to help with the mammoth task of running Ian World Publishing.
Yeah, so if anyone is looking for a job in the gaming industry, hop onto the show notes and there will be a link there to the job ad.
Fantastic. Chris, has anything caught your eye in the world of RPGs?
A Kickstarter did, actually. It's called Rosenstrm. It's pretty incredible. It's basically a one-shot game that starts around 1933 Berlin, and it deals with a Jewish... With the rise of the Nazis, and there's a Jewish family gets married between the two different pair, and it sort of charts the racial political impact of the Nazi Party on their marriage, and it becomes very engaging for the players over the course of like a 10-year span.
Wow!
And I believe they also did it in conjunction with a Holocaust museum, and they are on point for their research from everything I've seen.
Wow!
That's impressive.
That's on Kickstarter now, is it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Rosenstrm, yeah?
Yes. Second I saw it, I had to back it.
That's right. Okay, yeah. Please whack that over to us at some point, and we'll whack it in the show notes so people can find out more about it. Yeah, okay.
All right, then. Let's do some news, shall we?
Yes.
Right, then. In the news. Let's get the nasty stuff out of the way first.
Oh, yeah.
The continuing saga of Zach S. We'll again shoot through this really quickly. It's just that a bunch of companies have now actually responded. Wizards of the Coast, Gen Con, even Lamentations of the Flame Princess. So I'm just going to really quickly just say what they said and we'll move on because we don't have to dive into this too much. So Wizards of the Coast, as you recall, Mike Mills made an initial tweet which wasn't very well received. We discussed that last week. Wizards of the Coast have followed up with a further more detailed statement. I won't read the whole thing, but basically it's a much better statement. They say that they regret their choice to work with him back in 2014. They've planned a Dungeon Masters Guild bundle to raise funds for RAIN, which is the Rape, Abuse and Incest National Network, which I believe has made something like $70,000 now or something. It's doing really well, that bundle.
It's definitely worth getting in on that bundle because it's got some really amazing stuff in.
Yeah.
Like, it's been an outpouring of incredible generosity for these creators, letting their work go for some very bargain prices. And,
I think Wizards and Drive-Thru are both donating their share of the profits to the charity. Gen Con also has made a statement, again, kind of short and sweet, but Zach S has been banned from attending Gen Con permanently. Lamentations of the Fraying Princess made a statement. It was quite a long statement. It was interesting. It started by saying that Zach's work has been cancelled. They're not destroying any existing stock, but they won't be printing any more.
Well, other than the stuff that they have with the printers already.
Yeah. And they won't be working with him further. Then towards the end of the statement, it got a little weird. I think I'm just gonna put a link in the show notes, and people can go and look at it themselves, and they can draw their own conclusions as to what they think of that. But I don't know. It took a little bit of a turn towards the end of the statement there.
Yes.
Started off well.
Not entirely unexpected, to be fair. But,
yeah.
Unfortunate, really.
I guess so. And as we mentioned last week, Drive-Thru has already said it won't steal any future works by him. Ken Hite has said he won't work with him. The Gauntlet blog and podcast has said it will no longer cover him.
Yep.
D&D Beyond has removed his credits. Oh, that's the other thing Wizard of the Coast said. They're removing Zach's credits from future printings of the Player's Handbook.
Yeah, I think D&D Beyond removed all consultant credits.
Yeah.
From the work. So that was certainly a thing. So are they removing his specifically, or just all of the consultants in general?
As far as I can tell, just his.
Okay.
I'm not 100% sure, but that's what it looks like.
From my understanding, I thought they were going to remove all the credits, which
I think D&D Beyond did do that.
Yeah.
Just removed the whole lot. But anyway, let's move on from that distasteful subject and move on to something a bit more cheerful, shall we?
Very good.
So Critical Role. They announced last year that they were going independent, leaving Geek and Sundry. This has now happened. As of last Thursday, they have left Geek and Sundry. Critical Role was obviously like the most popular RPG live stream on the planet.
Yeah, Matt Mercer and his merry crew. Yeah.
By an order of magnitude.
Yes, yeah.
No, it is massive. So they've now got, their own network, which as of Thursday, February the 21st, that and Vox Machina, which is the sort of talk show based on it, have both gone independent. Going up on YouTube.
Is that YouTube Premium or something, or what's
I don't know.
Okay, fair enough.
Here we go. Critical Role has its own Twitch channel and its own YouTube page. There we go. And, of course, the Critical Role podcast network.
Oh, okay.
Do you remember we mentioned Monty Cook Games last week?
Yes, we mentioned
And they were slipping torn-out pages of Numenera products into their packages to customers.
Which had torn out pages of a proposed Numenera conversion to 5th Ed.
It was actual pages from existing Numenera books.
Yes.
Cypher system. But in the margins, they scribbled 5th edition notes all around them and just slipped them into various packages which they were sending out to customers. This stealth marketing campaign, which worked pretty well.
Yeah, well, we noticed it, so yeah. Bit marginalia. Oh, yeah. Love a bit of marginalia.
So it was a very short marketing campaign, because just days later, in fact on Wednesday, which was a week ago now, almost, when this goes out. They have announced their new project coming to Kickstarter in March. It's a 5th edition compatible sci-fantasy sourcebook, which allows you to play in settings using the D&D 5th edition rules, but settings like the Barrier Peaks or Numenera.
Oh, okay. So really bringing that sci-fi vibe to 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons.
Yes. Yeah. And as I say, nowadays, who knows science fantasy better than Monty Cook Games?
Certainly not a question I'd like to answer. Righto.
So it's called Arcana of the Ancients, or Arcana of the Ancients, depending whether you're British or American. And it's your comprehensive guide to bringing science fantasy into your 5th edition game, filled with creatures, devices, abilities, technologies, tips, etc.
How good? Yep.
Fantasy Flight Games have posted some information about Shadowlands, the new sourcebook for Legend of the Five Rings.
Oh, nice. So that being the Oriental, vaguely samurai-themed, but with a great wall against the chaos, Orientalist, I guess, role-playing game?
It says 144-page book exploring the horrors that lurk in the shadows south of the... I'm going to start pronouncing words wrong. Caillou Wall in the domain of Fu Leng. I don't know whether I said them right or not.
I can't see it written down, so I got no opinion on this.
When it comes to things like this, you just kind of just say it how it's written and just hope for the best, don't you?
There's a certain amount of just spray and pray.
You see Chris there, look, he's just laughing at us. He's like, who are these people?
he is, and to be fair, it's only reasonable, really.
But I was nice enough to mute the laughing.
Oh, that's the best part. Yeah. But yes.
You are more than welcome to include your laughter and your mocking derision on our podcast. It's fine. We're used to it.
And by we means Russ. Please don't laugh at me. I'm a very special snowflake. Almost got him. We almost had a spitake there.
There will be no coffee coming out of my nose this morning.
So they've previewed. Yes, the new preview includes the False Lantern Grove, the Festering Pit of Fuleng, and the Forgotten Tomb of Fuleng. I think previously we've mentioned a post that talked about the Falcon Clan, which is one of the minor clans that were sworn to fight the spiritual threats of the Shadowlands.
Oh, well, but with this new source book, it sounds like they're not fooling around.
Ow.
Oh.
Ow.
Oh, marvellous.
That physically hurt.
I saw an opening. I had to go for it. It's been wrong not to. I'm sorry. I distracted you. Please, continue.
Age of Sigmar!
Huzzah!
Age of Sigmar.
Is this Warhammer Fantasy related in some fashion?
Yes, it is. Cubicle 7 has unveiled Age of Sigmar's cover art. It's done by John Grenier, and it is a gorgeous piece of art. On the left of it, you can see like hordes of undead, the forces of chaos, charging towards a group of heroes, which are kind of like glowing with virtuous light, I guess. Holding back the forces. It's absolutely lovely.
That sounds like a strong cover for any book.
Yeah, it's absolutely brilliant. Love it. The Age of Sigmar, of course, is a Warhammer game. It's set after the Age of Chaos, and it's a D6 dice pool game. So during the Age of Chaos, the mortal realms were overrun with, sort of violence and death and stuff like that.
Yep.
Violence and death, violence.
Are you saying in the Grimdark of the Grimdark there was only Grimdark?
Yes, it was all Grimdark. But then Sigmar returned. This god called Sigmar returned, and the beginning of the Age of Sigmar began. Yes. And that's what happened.
So marvellous.
Yeah.
Okay. That sounds like it will be a thing to read at some point.
Yes, indeed. Yes. Link, as always, in the show notes.
Hey, go for Age of Sigmar. Right. Oh, I believe there's been some news about that thing that they have been trailing for quite some time. The D&D nautical version.
Okay, so yes, the new D&D book coming in May is called The Ghosts of Saltmarsh.
Not called Shiver My Timbers.
I wish it was called Shiver My Timbers, or Long Walk, Short Plank, or oh shit, it's wet in here, or
ahoy there, matey.
Exactly.
Exactly.
All superior names. Although I understand Ghosts of Saltmarsh to be actually based on an older module, is that right?
Yes, the old Saltmarsh trilogy, in fact. So it's a nautical themed book. It actually contains a whole bunch of short adventures. So it's more like what's it called? The book
Tales of Yawning Portal?
Yes, that. It's more like that, but they're all nautical themed.
So you can do a series of picaresques. How exciting.
Yeah, so it's got the classic U series, plus some of the best nautical adventures from the history of Dungeon magazine. So we've got The Sinister Secret of Saltmarsh, Danger at Dunwater, Salvage Operation, Isle of the Abbey, The Final Enemy, Tamarort's Fate, and The Styes.
They like their illustration.
Yeah, plus rules for ships, sea travel, deck plans, new monsters, all the sort of stuff that you would expect to see in a nautical source book.
Yeah, yes. And probably some special tips like don't fall off the side of the boat if you're a paladin.
Yeah. So I posted the news.
Swimming in.
I posted the news about this. So it was something like 8:00 last night, our turn. Basically, it popped up on Amazon. That's what happened. Wizards hasn't said anything. So it popped up on Amazon. Wizards will blame us for it, but it popped up on Amazon.
Yeah.
And Yeah, as soon as I posted it, it had something like 10,000 views within the first sort of 20 minutes. It's ridiculous. Nice. These D&D product announcements are just such big news items.
Yeah, absolutely. Although, I mean, you do have to wonder, is it part of a deliberate marketing strategy? Because they have these things pop up on Amazon, and then they don't say anything, and then we have, like, the announcement of the pre-announcement of the announcement of the new product coming out.
Well, they have announced when the announcement will be. They've announced the announcement.
Oh, the pre-announcement has been announced.
The pre-announcement of the announcement has been made.
Oh, this is fantastic news! Fantastic.
So the announcement will be made during their weekend live stream, which they do in LA every year, where they're going to announce the new D&D product. But they've announced when they're going to announce the announcement.
That's good.
So they can make sure you tune in to see the announcement.
Well, I, for one, feel better informed. I don't know about you guys.
Yeah. Marketing.
Yes. Anyway, anything else happened?
Yes. Lots of other things have happened.
Really?
Would you like more D&D stuff? More D&D stuff?
Can I have some more D&D stuff?
For some reason, all the news is D&D stuff. It's not my fault. I'm just a messenger. I don't make the news. I just tell you what the news is.
Well, clearly we should have to shoot you then. That's what you do with messengers, right?
Apparently so.
Yeah.
So,
I do have a bit of news actually.
Is it D&D
news? It's not D&D news.
Oh, excellent.
You remember our friend Ed Jowett at Shades of Vengeance?
No, I've forgotten him.
Oh, okay. He's been on the show twice for us.
Yes, I remember Ed. Yes.
Yeah. He's got his Era Consortium miniatures, and it's the 5th anniversary. So he's doing another Kickstarter, because say what you like about Ed Jowett, that man loves his Kickstarters.
He does enjoy a Kickstarter.
He does enjoy a Kickstarter. It's a special sort of personality that he has, but we love him anyway. So you do you, Ed, and you magnificent sir. So
he's basically the diametric opposite of me, isn't he? In every possible way.
He's the diametric opposite of a lot of people. He's got the special 5th anniversary definitive edition hardback coming out, 420 pages, and a whole set of miniatures, including heroes and Smirchoff security soldiers. So there you go. That's the official press release from Shades of Vengeance, which I am reading out, therefore making a journalist, I understand.
All right, then. How would you like some Greek D&D?
I'd love some Greek D&D.
It's actually American D&D, but it's Greek-themed.
I'm listening.
Odyssey the Dragon Lords.
It's a strong name.
Yeah, it is. It was actually announced last year. It's some people from BioWare that set up their little D&D studio.
Oh, yeah.
They've since partnered with Modiphius, as pretty much everyone seems to do these days, for distribution. And Odyssey of the Dragon Lords is sort of inspired by Greek mythology. So it's a campaign setting. I'm set in the world of, here goes me with the names again, Thylia. And it's a campaign setting for 5th edition.
Dragon Age? Is that the Dragon Age world? I don't know. I've never played the games.
It is not the Dragon Age world, no. Odyssey of the Dragon Lords, it's there's a 28-page sort of free booklet you can get now. It was released last week. You can download it. I downloaded it and peeked at it, and my God, it's beautiful. Like, this is layout to the max. You know what I mean? It's like gorgeous art, and I suppose from people who work for something like BioWare, you would expect that, because they've got all those resources to get gorgeous art and gorgeous layout and all that sort of stuff. But it's absolutely lovely. Totally free, 28 pages, so you can download it, presumably in advance of a proper hardcover campaign setting later this year.
Well, that sounds jolly. Okay.
Okay.
Have we got more D&D news on top of that?
Sadly, it's more D&D news, or happily, depending on your perspective.
I think everyone loves a bit of D&D news, unless you don't, in which case that's
it's more. But it's more stats.
More stats.
They keep releasing stats. This time it's feats.
Feats.
What do you reckon the most popular feat is?
Oh, that is a tricky one. It's either I would say it's either Polar Master or Great Weapon Master.
Incorrect. Neither of those are even in the top 4.
Wow. Tell me then, Russ, what is the top 4 of epic feats that are chosen for D&D?
Okay. Number 1 is the Warcaster.
That is a solid choice.
Number 2 is Tough.
Okay, yes, that is certainly a thing you could do. Yep.
Number 3 is Lucky.
Ah, Lucky. How come I've never actually had anyone take Lucky in any of the games I've been in. So, it's like, but there you go. Yep. Anything else?
And number 4 is Sharpshooter.
Ah, Sharpshooter. Yes. No, makes sense.
They've also got it broken down by class. So if you wanted to see what the top 3 monk ones were, or the top 3 druid ones were, or whatever, you can do that. I'll put a link in the show notes for that too.
Yes. Probably none of those for monk, I'd have thought, but I'm probably wrong about that as well. There's so many things to be wrong about. So little time.
Yeah. That doesn't mean that's necessarily the best ones.
They're just the most profitable.
They're the most popular ones. Yeah.
Yes. Best will be a movable feast, depending on exactly what you're trying to achieve.
Yes, yeah. Right, well, that is it for the news this week.
Fantastic.
It is fantastic.
Yes.
So, what would you like to do now? Would you like to play our favourite game in all the world?
Would I? But the question I have to ask is, where will I get a deck of playing cards at this sort of notice?
Oh, the jokes never get old. Even when you make the same joke every week after week after week.
What, about being confused about what our favourite game in all the world is?
Yes.
Really?
As our listeners know, our favourite game in the world is, in fact, the game where I tell you the name of a Kickstarter and you have to guess what it is from just the name.
Oh, yes, that is our favourite game in all the world. I had forgotten about that somehow. Oh, yeah. I think, Chris, would you like to play as well, Chris?
Yes, I would.
Okay.
Fantastic! All right, then.
Right.
In a break from tradition, can we have Kickstarters that are going to end after the show has gone out?
We did that once. I made that mistake once. Like 2 months ago with one Kickstarter. And you just won't let it go.
What can I say? I'm not Elsa. Frozen jokes as well. Ah, yes.
Right, we don't actually have many this week, so it's just going to be one each, I'm afraid. Okay. I've got 4 here, but 2 of them are so obvious by the name that I don't think there's much point. Ultimate Player Race Creator and Pocket Box Games of the 80s, I think, are both really, really obvious what they are.
So wait, is Pocket Box Game in the 80s this enormous box of games built in the 2000s?
Yes, 10 out of 10. That's exactly what it is.
I wanted to make my bad joke too, sorry.
Well, you came to the right podcast, my friend. You came to the right podcast.
Well, Pocket Box Games of the 80s is Steve Jackson Games' thing, which is Star Wars, Truck Stop and Crash City.
Yeah.
They're remaking them. And Ultimate Player Race Creator, which I think has actually been mentioned on the podcast before, was how you create a whole bunch of different races yourself.
Yeah.
But let's move on to the game. So it's literally just going to be one each. So It's all just on one guess. It's going to be a tough one. All to play for. So let's start with you, Peter, and then Chris can see how it works.
Yeah.
Are you ready?
Yeah, let's do it. Woo.
Okay. Peter, what is Hudson and Brand, Shadows of the Past?
Well, to be honest, it sounds like a comic book. I want that I'd pick up and read, because if I was reading Hudson and Brand, Shadows of the Past, I would be expecting sort of a early to mid 20th century set sort of tales of adventure involving somebody called Hudson, somebody called Brand, and probably going off on some sort of adventures in, we'll say America, but possibly expand that to other places as well. But primarily, they're Americans doing American things, involving some sort of Cthulhu-esque mythos. So that's what I'd expect it to be, but it's not a comic book, it's got to be an RPG product. So, yeah, like a source book for that. But it doesn't sound very Cthulhu-y. No, I'll go with that. That guess, but has a source book for Call of Cthulhu.
Okay. Well, you're correct, it is not a comic book.
Huzzah!
Actually, you're not too far off. So it is for Call of Cthulhu.
Ooh.
It's set in Victorian London, not America. And it's 3 linked scenarios. So it's basically an anthology, a little anthology collection. It's built on a setting established in something called Hudson and Brand Inquiry Agents of the Obscure, although it does stand on its own, so you don't need that book. So 3 scenarios, a Cthulhu by Gaslight adventure anthology, essentially. You've got to thwart an ancient cult that seeks vengeance against the Empire for its activities in Africa. And by Empire, I'm assuming they mean the Galactic Empire, headed up by Chancellor Palpatine.
Well, it'd be Emperor Palpatine if it's Empire.
Yeah.
Otherwise, like, he was Chancellor for the, Federation? Confederation? I don't know. What was it called? The Senate. There we go.
The Republic.
The Republic. Yes, there we go. Republics have Senates. Everyone knows this.
Yeah. I don't know. 5 out of 10 there, Peter. You weren't too far off. So, Chris.
Best score in weeks.
5 out of 10 to beat. I don't want to put any pressure on you, but when we've had guests on, Peter has, to this date, never yet won. He's lost every time.
What were the chances?
I like to enable people and make them feel better about themselves.
Okay, then.
Nice. Yeah.
All right, then. Here we go. Are you ready?
Go
All
for
right.
it. You can do
All
it.
right. What is Beat the Boss?
I'm gonna assume it's not a video game.
Oh, yeah. This is a role-playing game podcast. You can take that as the as the core assumption.
Let's go. It's gonna be a supplement that deals with creating powerful and fully fleshed out antagonists for your campaign. And if it's not, I may make that book after this podcast.
Hey, there we go.
I suggest you do go and make that book.
Oh, damn.
Silver Cloud, Silver Lining and all that. Unfortunately, you might be the first person ever to lose to Peter in our favourite game in all the world, which is...
I'm glad you're not making me feel bad about it being a guest. Oh, wait.
What we'll do is we'll say you did it deliberately just to make him feel better.
Oh, thank you, Chris. I appreciate you throwing a game for me.
So this is a core rulebook for an RPG, powered by the Apocalypse game, and it's based on class war, organising on the job and in the community. So in Beat the Boss, you and your friends take turns organising a group of workers to take part in the fight of their lives. You have to identify issues, make banners, and then plan and take actions that will change the balance of power at work.
Okay, wow, that was hard.
Yeah.
But it's a good name, though. That is a proper good name.
To be honest, that was a tough one. I'd have been amazed if you'd gotten that. That was...
yeah, it's very rare you see RPGs go full-on communist. I'm like, okay.
Well, there you go.
Why not? But surely it should be called Beat the Boss World. I mean, that would have then been an instant gimmick. Yeah.
Yes, I suppose. Powered by the apocalypse and all. Yeah. Right, anyway, that's it for our favourite game in the world. Somehow Peter has scraped through for the first time in his life.
I will take my defeat and I will go and eventually pour my sorrows out over scotch.
All right, Harry, I've decided. I'm going to tell girls I'm a wizard.
But, Jeff, you're not a wizard. You can't even cast spells.
Hey, I've always wanted to be a wizard. And besides, it will help me get with the ladies.
Jeff, you don't even know the first thing about wizardry.
We'll see. I got a date tonight. I'll tell you all about it tomorrow. Why did I tell you, Harry? The ladies love a wizard.
But you're not a wizard. You can't learn the whole of wizardry in a single day. That's absurd.
Oh, you can, my friend. You can if you have the right teacher.
Listen, Jeff, I don't care if it's Mordenkainen himself. There's no wizard in the whole of Faerun that can teach you how to do magic in 5 hours. Go on then, what's his name?
Whose name?
Your wizard tutor. What's his name, Jeff? What if I want to be a wizard?
His
Yeah,
name?
yeah, what's his name?
Mephistopheles.
What?
Mephistopheles.
Well, that silent spell seems to be working just fine. Come on, who are you?
Mephistopheles, okay? Mephistopheles. My wizard teacher's name is Mephistopheles.
Jeff, you...
Yep.
You idiot. You went and...
Yeah, I did. And you know what? I'm proud of it. I'm a wizard now, and that's that.
No, you idiot. You're not a wizard. You're a warlock. Shall we start talking about Chris and Harlem Unbound?
But he's sitting right there. He'll be able to hear everything we have to
Yes.
say.
I may have heard about that book in passing.
Harlem Unbound won, you said 3 Ennies last year.
Yeah.
Which is
Including
astonishing.
It is.
And I have read it, and I think it's absolutely fantastic. I assume you've read it as well, Peter?
Yes.
Just to sort of put it in context. So Harlem Unbound, it's for Call of Cthulhu, and it's for Pelgrane's Gumshoe system. And it's set in, I believe it's 1920s New York, in Harlem specifically, during a time when there were a lot of race struggles going on. And I believe you refer to it as the Renaissance?
It's the Harlem Renaissance,
Harlem
which
Renaissance,
kind of ran from roughly 1918 to the mid-1930s.
Yeah. All of that with a beautiful blend of Cthulhu-esque horror and cultists and all that sort of lovely dark Cthulhu stuff that you get in all that. Obviously, American history isn't really my strong point. I know smatterings, but I'm not.
I refuse to make you feel bad about knowing the importance of the Harlem Renaissance by saying it or pointing it out now.
You do that. It's fine. It's totally fine.
It was monumental and groundbreaking and world-changing.
Let's just say I know more about it now than I did previously. So,
which is part of the reason for the book.
Excellent. Yeah.
No.
No, it's like super educational, that book. I mean, you've got tons of information about the history of Harlem. I mean, not aside from the Cthulhu stuff and the sort of adventures that you've got in the book. You've got tons of stuff about the history of Harlem, all the sort of social conditions going on at the time, all the sort of effects of things like the Jim Crow laws and all that sort of stuff you talk about. You even have advice in there for non-black players playing black characters and what's appropriate to do and say and what's not, and you know, you sensibly sort of say, don't try and put on a silly accent and don't try and do this and don't try and do that.
I felt that was incredibly crucial if you're trying to make something that's engaging for everyone and you want to create a safe space for people to play in.
Yeah.
Because the topic itself is incredibly difficult, and it's something a lot of people try not to address. Some people said role-playing is light fare and it shouldn't deal with real-world issues, which I, of course, totally disagree with.
Yeah, absolutely. You're on the opposite end of that, yeah. When did you start writing this? I know it came out a year or two ago, but when did you start on this project?
Probably 2014 is when the idea sort of first came to me.
Yeah.
And I created a sort of a pitch document, and I sent it around to different companies, and I got a lot of, that's not quite what we're looking for. And even getting rejections would take a massive amount of time. Sort of they would take it, they'd sit on it, and then eventually I'd hear back, no, it's not for us. And I started I fortunately was introduced to AV, and I learned about Metatopia, and I went to Metatopia one year, and I sort of had I hate to call it a soapbox, but a soapbox. And I was talking about all the issues I've seen in gaming out of my time gaming, how the things I want to change, and about Harlem Unbound, and how I think it's a great tool that can help sort of move that conversation forward.
So, Cthulhu, Gumshoe, what would you say each of those two systems brings to the game? Because they're two different systems, and I noticed you've included both in one book.
They're not entirely dissimilar. They're very investigation focused.
Oh, yeah, and there are Cthulhu games powered by the Gumshoe system, obviously, yeah. Having
a foot really in both the Chaosium Call of Cthulhu and Gumshoe from Trail. I've also read a little bit of Ashen Stars, and I've done the entire experience itself. Each one has a different benefit they would bring to it. For the Gumshoe side, it's a lot more investigative, and you can drill down on that aspect of it and move away from the actual combat, because necessarily combat isn't what you're going to want to go for in this type of game, because you're dealing with social issues. And if you want to say in the 20s punch a cop as a black person, your game is pretty close to being over.
Yeah, that's gone very badly wrong.
Gumshoe lets you focus more on the interactive aspects. You acquire all the clues and you sort of solve the mystery while hopefully circumventing the real life issues that you have to navigate through, and still stop the mythos. And for Call, it lets you do some investigative work, but it also adds a little bit of that action and horror to it. For when you see it, the sanity effects of like marking off the points from 100 going down is a very visceral effect for a player to sit there, well, I guess I'll mark through those 4 points of sanity and look at what they have. And it gives you more of a combat flair for that if you want to go for it. If you're kicking open a door and trying to shoot down a band of ghouls that are munching on someone.
Yeah. Oh, exactly. Yeah. Or there's just you find a shog off in the basement, and sometimes the only answer is more dynamite.
Yeah. I mean, I have a shog off in the basement.
And my current...
That's not an innuendo, by the way.
Okay.
For instance, my current con scenario that I run for when I go to conventions is a Pulp Cthulhu, sort of early 1930s Harlem Renaissance game that deals with mobsters and some other things I can't tell because it'd be spoilers.
Right, okay.
Absolutely. Spoilers are absolutely unforgivable, so we'll have none of those on this podcast. Thank you. We appreciate your restraint. I think the game comes with four adventures written in to help you really get started into role playing in the Harlem setting. And they look pretty good. Harlem Hellfighters, Harlem Knights, sorry. Yeah. And there are another couple as well.
The Contender, A Love Story, and Dreams and Broken Wings.
Yes, there we go. You can tell which ones I was interested in, to be fair. What can I say basic?
So what made you think to sort of, other than just writing a game set in that time period in that location and then bringing in the Cthulhu stuff, what made you decide to sort of, what was it that made you think that you really wanted to bring in the sort of more educational aspects of the game where you talk very much about the time period, the location, the racism that took place and all that sort of stuff? What made you want to do that in a role-playing game?
That was one of the key things for me. Yeah. Because a lot of African American history and history of diverse people are sort of being erased or being whitewashed over. Yeah. And other people are claiming stories, and one of the ways that we can help fight that is to educate people about the actual history of what's going on in the world. And you need to do it in a way that's engaging and has something that people want to read. And then after they've read it, they sort of ingest part of it and they go and share it with other people. And that sharing part is what role-playing is exceptional at. Because, for instance, if I wrote a novel, Peter might have read it and think, well, that's a pretty good book. And he may say, hey, this is a decent book. And you may or may not have some interest in it. But for the role-playing game, Peter reads it, says, you know what, I really like this scenario. I want to run this scenario. Then he's pulling in a group of anywhere from 3 to 6 players. My table has gone up to 14 players.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. Nice.
We'll say out of those 6 people, 2 or 3 of them may also be GMs, and they go, you know what, I really like this. And then they'll go play, and they'll bring another 3 to 6 people, and it ripples out in the waves, and it's educating, it's fun, and it's helping people live as much as they can that experience. So when they meet someone else that's different from them, they may view that person differently and try to interact and be more understanding for them.
Right. So, in your view, it's important that players do actually, I say experience, obviously they're not experiencing the racism, but get a glimpse of the racism that took place just through their interactions with NPCs and so forth.
Yes, because even in the book, I state up front, there's no way that we can understand, there's no way that we can experience or live through what these people live through. Yeah. We can sort of get like a vague glimpse of it, and we know what it is, and then when we see it, even in that game, we can then look around us and see how it's still impacting us every day now. Because racism is still very real today, and lethal still today.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
So,
it's sort of contrary to the sort of games I would myself run, because I don't generally touch upon themes of racism on the grounds that if someone has to deal with this in their regular life, why would I then want to make them deal with this in their fantasy life? But this sort of experiential, ways to see the world in different shoes, it's from an empathetic point of view, a really interesting experiment.
But that's also why I introduced different levels of play in the game, so you can see how much of it you want to put in your game. Because not doing it all, in my opinion, doesn't help the conversation, doesn't help the other people in the world understand what's going on.
Yeah.
And also, I mean, it's not just a game about racism. That is a theme that you can have in the game, which you can have more or less on as you see fit, 'cause you provided for that. But also, it's like a really incredibly detailed setting. That's one of the things I really appreciated when I was reading it, because for a lot of Cthulhu, especially in the UK, you can either do something set in 1920s UK, which sort of we have more of a familiarity with, and it tends to be like small isolated villages, and there's a lot of fog involved. Right?
Yeah.
You got a stately home, you got some fog, you're good, mate, you're good, is all we're saying. Whereas like doing stuff in 1920s America, we're a lot more at sea, metaphorically speaking. So the fact that you've got this like well-defined setting of Harlem in New York, So there's like an outside place, but because it's all really concentrated, you can go into building up a lot of it. And it sort of is something that I think that we could maybe get on board with, if that makes sense.
But it is such a rich setting, isn't it? I mean, I think it's certainly one of the benefits of using real world locations and places, especially places that, we know an awful lot about. Like, if you...
I think we do. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, but,
for me, one of the best compliments I got from the book was someone that lives in Harlem told me that reading this book completely conveyed what Harlem is to me.
Yeah.
Oh, nice. That's got to make you feel good.
It did, and it's awesome. And I'm glad people are enjoying the setting because the writers that worked on it had to do an incredible amount of research. And we went back and forth. It's like, I need for this to be completely accurate. For instance, if we're walking down this avenue, I need to make sure whatever building was there at that point in time, we can reference. So if someone goes back and they go, I don't think that building existed in 1927. That building is there in 1927. It may be gone in 1928, but it's there in 1927.
Yeah. Well, I think the sort of the richness of sort of the music and the styles and all that sort of stuff, which is also very quintessentially American as well. Like Peter was saying, very, very foreign to us. But it's so immersive that I was reading through it and I was just thinking, I really, really, really want to actually play in this setting. I mean, even if it didn't have important things to say, which it does, I would still want to play in that setting because it's so richly written. There's so much detail you've got in there, and it's you've got so many just small locations crammed in there, which you just think, I just want to go to that club. I just want to see that barbershop. Do you know what I mean? It's
If you want to come to Breakout Con in Toronto next month, it's the last game of Harlem Unbound that I'm running for first edition.
That'll be Toronto. Southampton. Yeah, Canada, damn it.
Yeah. Well, it does sound fun, and I do mean to revisit Toronto. It's been a while, but next month might be a bit short notice for me. But,
if you make it, I'll make sure there's a seat just for you.
Thank you.
I'll have to see how Jess feels about her trip.
So from perspective of someone like me, so a white guy, an English white guy, so
super English.
American history and American culture is, not totally foreign to me because I have a television. I mean, what advice would you give someone like me that's decided, right, I want to sit down with my gaming group, who is, again, they're all middle-aged white men. What advice would you give someone like me if I were to, sit down and decide I'm going to run one of these adventures for this gaming group? How should someone like me approach that?
First thing is probably to sit down and have an honest discussion with your gaming group. It doesn't have to be a long one, just something that you all touch base and that you're all on the same page. So you can then gauge what level of comfort people have.
Yeah.
Because the objective isn't to make someone feel uncomfortable completely in playing the game.
Sure.
There are 3 different tiers. I don't expect anyone to probably ever really play the purest tier that I myself have run, which tries to bring in as much of the harsh reality as we can. And that's a very intimate sort of experience where you have to trust the people that you're having that game with.
Right. I think if you're running the game and you're playing, say, a white police officer, and your players obviously are playing black protagonists, which is the core concept of the game, the interactions between the GM and the player, I mean, they could verge on the problematic, I would think. How I would traverse that line while trying to keep it real and educational without, going too far and making it an uncomfortable and unpleasant experience for those involved.
Well, at some level, it's going to be uncomfortable no matter what.
Yeah.
Because of the subject matter, people's oversensitivity to it in a negative aspect and not really trying to address it.
Yeah.
Most people would rather ignore it and like it doesn't exist, which hurts everyone that racism impacts. So it goes back to what I've mentioned before. It's that initial conversation. That lets you establish what you want to do. If you go for the first layer where they might only use a racial tension modifier, which gives them sort of negative dice to their rolls, and they may imply certain things. For instance, I know when I run con games, I try to make it around the first tier because it's people that I don't know, they don't know me, they maybe just be trying to test out Harlem Unbound because it's something they heard, they might have read an article about it, or they have interest in trying to see the conversation move forward. So for that, it's a lot of implied things. One of the things that happens in the scenario that I just mentioned before, for the pulp one, is some of it revolves around a house. And the investigators go, and some of them went to City Hall. And they go to City Hall to try to find out about the house. But before they could find out anything for the house, the receptionist gives them a form to fill out. And they fill out the form, and then she reads over it and says something more or less to the extent, changes per group, that, all right, I see that you can read. So then what do you need? Which goes back to the literacy test that African Americans always had to take before they could attempt to vote. And it's not as harsh as it is because the literacy test they had to take would always change and the answers would always be a little different or constantly evolving. So
right, yeah.
But that is a subtle nod to what people go through. And even after saying that, the players go, oh crap, I didn't know that's what we just did. And that's not using offensive language, that's not doing anything violent, but it's still conveying the same message.
Sure. I mean, when it comes to offensive language, that really is, that is a very difficult subject. I mean, I've read your advice on, for example, the N-word in the book, where you basically say don't use it. It's just you don't need to. Yeah. You can sort of conjure the horror of racism in other ways. You don't have to do that.
Show, don't tell, sort of thing.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not like you're going to have to learn massive new GMing skills. Like we're talking about having a conversation with your players, that's session 0 stuff. It's like you should probably be doing that before you start on new campaigns anyway, just to make sure everyone's on the same page.
But that's the easiest and simplest one to convey in a very short conversation, is the initial talk. You're establishing a baseline. To go into more detail would be definitely a more engaging conversation. I think it'll take longer than what we have here.
Sure.
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
absolutely.
Would you suggest using any offensive terms at all for any group?
For me, no.
Would you say
it's not? It may give you like an immediate shock value, but you're more inclined to offend someone at the table.
Yeah.
Even if you don't intend to, and it will not give you what you want.
Yeah.
You should be conveyed through actions. Subtle, small things are definitely more powerful. Because,
Yeah.
for instance, if I'm at a table and someone says like an offensive word, I may just get up and leave.
Yeah, rightly so. It's like things you mentioned, like I think like plantation owners were setting their dogs on someone, but you could also have it again with very subtly, like you mentioned just now, like the receptionist gives you a dirty look, or things I've seen for sexism is refusing to talk to the women in the party and only addressing the men, sort of thing. That sort of show of bias.
Yeah.
Would that be?
Which I've also done that in one of the games, because in the con scenario I have, it's an integrated party, and when they go to different places, the individuals speak to different people in the party.
Yeah.
And it's just not against black people. They go to somewhere that's more or less a completely black-run club. They're more inclined to talk to the black person and ignore like the white person that's with them. So it's not just about that. You have to find a way to balance everything. It's a delicate dance.
Yeah.
Can we talk a little bit about the Jim Crow laws? I mean, they were in effect at the time, weren't they?
Yes.
In the American South. Did they were up as far as...
Jim Crow, I think, stayed on the books in the South until the 60s.
Oh, that late?
Yeah.
Wow.
But I want to also point out that racism is not only in the South.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
That's, for instance, like the Green Book is one of the real Green Book, not the movie about the white savior Green Book that won the Oscars last night.
I haven't seen it yet.
Sorry, I
Spoilers.
told it for you, but I'm really a little about that.
Yeah.
So the Green Book was actually used to travel throughout the United States because there are racist places in New York, over in California. Racism is not only in the South. I know that's a story that people like to tell. It's not true.
Yeah.
It's also an international thing. And I know that people only try to say racism is only in the U.S., but it's... Sorry, there was a soapbox coming.
No, that's all right. That's all right.
Well, it's just like, please feel free. Get yourself comfy. You need a small step to get on. It's fine.
So you've written this initial game. Is there more coming?
Well, there's the second edition of Harlem Unbound that
Which you're doing with
Chaosium and I are producing.
Yeah, I saw that.
Oh, so what can we expect to see in the second edition? What is it? Bigger? Is it better? Is it?
I will say that it is definitely better-ish.
Right.
Which means... So there's a lot of stuff that I wanted to do for the first edition that I couldn't do because of time constraints, being the first book I ever published. And so now I'm getting a chance to go back and tweak some things from the first edition.
Okay.
There's probably about 30 to 40% new material in Volume 2. There's new scenarios, there are maps for the scenarios themselves. There's new art. Some of the texts have changed. I've got a new proofreader to come in and read over some different things. It's vastly different. It's worth having both editions.
Excellent. When can we expect to see that? Is that going to be kickstarted, or is it?
It's not being kickstarted.
Oh, not kickstarted.
I've sent the final document over to Chaosium last month.
Yeah.
The cover art's already dropped. It's going to be released in redacted.
Okay. To be fair, I'm the same. I never give release dates to things because every single time you give a release date and you miss it, someone shouts at you. So I just got to the point where I say, I don't know, when it's done.
But I do want to take a minute to talk a little bit about Mask of the Mythos, if that's all right.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Yeah, that's it.
So Onyx Path approached me because they want to introduce a Mythos Pantheon into Scion, and they asked if I'd be interested. And I accepted, so I'm actually working on a Mythos Scion book right now.
Okay.
Assemble the team. We're actually having our first big meeting tonight, and it's pretty exciting.
Wow, so that's literally just starting.
Yes.
Wow. So what?
Our first meeting is tonight. Everyone has different material they've read, and it's going to be a writer's scrum, basically.
Wow, that sounds fantastic. And
that's that sound you're hearing is the sound of my brain changing gears without a clutch. It's like, okay, wow, yeah, Mythos and Scion. That's Scion, for those listeners who are unfamiliar with it, is where people are the scions, the children, essentially, of gods, a bit like Hercules and so forth, but also with pantheons from all over the world. I think there's like Aztec, Indian, Chinese, Nordic, Greek, the whole 9 yards. If you've had like a pantheon of gods, they've got you covered in Scion. So actually doing a Mythos pantheon, it sounds so obvious. Should totally have thought of it before, but it didn't. So good work.
I can say that Neil Raymond Price and his crew that put out the second edition Scion book cared so much about proper representation. I am astonished, and I am proud to be part of this.
That's right.
I can't wait to see it.
Master of Mythos. Right.
Can I just jump back to Harlem Unbound quickly? Is that all right?
I am always happy to talk about it.
No, actually, I just wanted to talk to you. I was just wondering, did you get any pushback from the crowd that likes to say, I don't want politics in my games? You know, pushback from people who say they don't want you to put that in what is for them an arena where politics should steer clear.
They don't want other people.
Because it's something I see time and time again, and I can't imagine you didn't, but I thought I'd ask.
I got some pushback, but also the Kickstarter page itself literally says that I'm flipping Lovecraft's concept on his head by placing diverse investigators as protagonists and not as side dressing or color and addressing Lovecraft's racism head on.
Yeah, so you made it clear from the start, yeah.
And after that, I have a couple of troll fans that like to pop up whenever I do anything. But on the whole, it's been incredibly, I don't really know how to say it, but it feels great to know there's so many people that want to see it change. And their support outweighs any negative thing I've seen.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah. I think it also helps that it is very good as well, because something like that, when you're doing something so important, I think obviously it's very important that the actual material be good too. Otherwise that could fall flat on its face.
Which is why I worked so hard to build the team that I did. It's my name on the front cover of that book, but I could not have done that book by myself to the quality and standard it is. I value every single member of my team. And that's why whenever I try to go anywhere, I try to tell people about them. I promote them to other creatives that are looking for artists or writers. And every single one of them is a gem.
Well, do you want to tell us a bit more about them now? Because, like I say, it's clearly like an absolute labour of love, and they've really smashed it.
But no, for the crew, Ruth Tillman, Alex Mayo, Neil Raymond Price, Bob Geis, Brennan Reese, who is my right-hand man, and there's Sarah Hood, there's Nino Milan, and Philip John Pierre. All of them exceptional.
Who did the art in that book? Because you've got some very stylized, striking art in there. Who was the artist?
Philip, Brennan, Alex, and Nino did the art for the first edition.
It's absolutely lovely. I love it. Is that changing for the second edition then? Because I did actually really like that. I really liked that art. Is that...
For the second edition, I brought over most of the art from the first edition, but I've also managed to bring on Jabari Weathers, and they are incredible. I was incredibly ecstatic that Jabari joined the crew. I brought back maybe 80% of the original team.
You mentioned Lovecraft earlier. And, obviously...
It's a little hard not to if you're talking about
Sure,
mythos.
of course. But, I mean,
he's kind of a big deal for us.
Yeah. But my point is, he's famously a very, very, very racist individual. Was a very racist individual. Presumably, you're sort of comfortable with separating the art from the man in that context.
So a lot of people, I think, first come to Lovecraft and his work through gaming or Call of Cthulhu.
Yes.
For me, the first time I read Lovecraft's work, I actually read it in a novel, sitting in an estate home at like 1 a.m. So it gave me an understanding of, because I was reading The Outsider, amongst other things, and the concept of being a young black man in Alabama, having to fight against insurmountable odds or attempting to crush you under heel is what really appealed to me. And so that's what really linked me onto it. After that, I discovered more about Lovecraft, the people that are fans of him and some of the different crowds and everything else. But I am able mostly to put aside the man himself and focus more on the work, but a lot of his politics from the work, and you have to sort of filter those out.
Right, yeah.
Yeah. I have a terrible weakness for purple prose, and few writers are more purple in prose than, H.P. Lovecraft. It's like full on Edward Buller, Lytton, Dark and Stormy Night sort of jazz. And it's like, so I'm reading it, and it's like, but then, the ideas, they weren't even appropriate for the time period. Because, some people say, it's of his time. It's like, it wasn't even of his time. He was racist even in time of racist. It has been difficult, and there's a slew of other isms also associated with his work. Oh yeah. Not a big fan of the Womenfolk or H.P. Lovecraft.
I sadly have never actually read any Lovecraft. I really should rectify that. I've read Call of Cthulhu, and I've read role-playing game stuff, but I haven't actually read any actual Lovecraft.
I don't know, Chris. Is there any because we talk about the mythos, because there's a huge body of writers who, because it was pretty much one of the first shared universes. I would argue. Yeah, so there's a lot of people like August Derleth, even Robert Howard of Conan fame, and
Howard's mythos stuff is a lot more pulpish than what Lovecraft is.
I know Lovecraft, something can be like, oh no, it's horrible, faint and foul, whereas Howard's like, well, something comes along, punch it out. It's like, this is an interesting take on fighting. I hadn't thought of this before, but yes, I see where you're coming from.
Well, I think that sort of happens because you do see sort of Cthulhu-esque stuff being inserted into just about every game system in existence. There's Pathfinder Cthulhu, and there's D&D Cthulhu, and there's all sorts of stuff. But of course, in something like Pathfinder, if it's got stats, you can kill it. I mean, that's just how the game works.
But if you're looking for something, I would say The Shadow over Innsmouth is always a solid bet. Shadow on the Time, The Outsider if you want a short one.
Probably best to start with a short one, to be fair, just to see if I can actually get into it. Because unlike Peter, I'm not a big fan of that kind of prose. I find that a struggle, so we'll see.
Then The Terrible Old Man, I think, is 3 or 4 pages, and it's always
3 or 4
nice
pages.
little...
I like the sound of that. 1-page Lovecraft. That's the... That's where in really large font.
Oh yeah. Are there any more modern authors that you would recommend, Chris? Someone who's inspiring you at the moment. Sorry, I'm completely throwing that on you. So there's just
Keanu Coates is always my go-to.
Who?
Coates, from originally journalist at The Atlantic. He's now doing Black Panther. I'm looking at my shelf of his books. If you haven't read it yet, Zora Hurston's recent release, Barracoon, which is awesome. I actually got to list that in the second issue of Harlem Unbound and made me ecstatic.
Nice.
So, anything else in the future? I mean, Harlem is an example of a time period and a place that you could focus on. Have you got thoughts of doing games or settings elsewhere?
I do. I've actually solidified my second Darker Who Studio project, what I want to do. I've started reaching out to a few people that I want to work with on it, because I'm going to want another diverse team of people to work with me, because the topic is going to be big. I think this is going to be another hard book to push.
Can you give us any clues?
No. I can say redacted 6 times if you want.
What about if we just start listing things and you just nod or shake your head?
Or you know what I really like a soul and sorcery book, like swords and sorcery, but something that takes advantage of the fact that Africa is a massively huge and diverse place.
If you haven't read it, I'd suggest you could start with Charles Saunders and the Amaro series.
Yeah, the Amaro stuff. Yeah, I've been having a look, but I was thinking less for reading purposes and more for role-playing game setting.
Then you want to definitely check out Bastion by Jerry Grayson. Jerry is a genius and probably one of the best creative people I had a chance to work with. He actually brought me on to do Seven Seas work, and I love his process. I may have stolen a couple things I do now from Jerry because it was so cool.
Right. Well, we're coming up on an hour and a half now, so it's time to start.
If you don't mind, I would like to do a selfless plug.
Yeah, of course you can. Yeah.
Please.
So I've got a couple things in the hopper for Chaosium. My Pulp Cthulhu superhero source book. It's modern day superheroes battling Cthulhu.
Wow.
Which I will be dropping to Mike sometime next month.
What was that called, sorry?
Oh, it's blah, 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 blah,
okay.
blah, blah, blah.
Another one of those. I dare you to actually call it that.
Redacted the redactination.
Then directly after that, I'm going headlong into the Afro-Judeo science fiction line that Chaosium announced last year. Some of it got put on the back burner so we could get Harlem Unbound V2 done.
Yeah.
But then it's all about that.
Oh, what's that line called?
Redacted.
Again, redacted.
It's a news podcast, Chris.
I can do the announcement for it if you want.
Well, Chris, I must say, you brought this on yourself. You're going to have to come back when some of these products have come out and tell us more about them.
All right.
If that would be okay with you.
It would be. But I will tell you one that I can tell you that I love that just came out, and then I'll stop plugging for myself.
Yes. If you can plug things that you can tell us about, that would be better.
This is actually for Pilgrim Press.
Yeah.
It's the Cthulhu Confidential, Even Death Can Die. It takes 3 scenarios for all 3 Dex, Viv, and Langston and puts them in a book. 2 of the scenarios for each character is already out on drive-thru, and the 3rd scenario was written specifically for that book for each character. And I think they dropped it this week, so you can sign up and get the PDF now. And then the hard edition comes out, I think, later this year.
Fantastic.
Nice.
Thank you so much for coming on, Chris. It's been an absolute pleasure. I really do hope you do come back on again. When you're allowed to say these redacted names, just let us know, and you are absolutely more than welcome anytime. Thank you, everybody, for listening, as always. And until next week, that'll be goodbye from me, Russ.
That'll be goodbye from me, Peter Coffey from the Southampton Guild of Roleplayers.
That'll be a goodbye from me, Chris Spivey, Dark View Studios on Twitter.
Goodbye, everybody. Until next week. Bye-bye.
Well, I imagine you were as disappointed as I was with that podcast. I will have them tortured as usual. I think I'm going to put Russ in a small box in the basement, while Peter will be hung from the ramparts.